Om Sarashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Be seated, please. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Very good. Welcome back. Welcome also to the many students who attend this class regularly online. We continue our study of Uddhava Gita. Can we put the slide up, please? Yeah, thank you. This is the last verse we saw in the last class. We were discussing duality. We need to set the context here before we proceed. The context is duality, but to make things confusing, duality is two. There are two kinds of duality. 2 times 2 is, but that's not what we're talking about here. But two different aspects of duality. The first aspect is what's up on the screen now that we were discussing last week, and that is a duality between good and bad. And I mentioned that in Western philosophy, duality doesn't mean like non-duality and duality in Advaita Vedanta. In Western philosophy, duality means good and evil. Now, we won't use the word evil, so good and bad. It is a duality, and it's a duality that's harmful. As soon as we categorize things, it leads to problems. In fact, problems like raga, dvesha, you label something good and you chase after it. You label something bad and you run away from it. You're stuck with something good, you're happy. You're stuck with something bad, you're unhappy. But as we discussed at some length in the last class, these are arbitrary judgments, good and bad. Good is what you like, bad is what you don't like, and it varies from person to person. The example I gave last week and many times before is Karela, this bitter gourd. By the way, I give that, this is called Guru Parampara. My guru used this example, so what do? I could have used some other food, but I heard this example so many times, it's natural to pass it on. But in the case of Karela, it doesn't cause any big consequence. But in other areas of life, it causes big consequences when you label a person good or bad. The point, let me try to just summarize the whole last class. Karela is neither good nor bad. It is a naturally occurring vegetable. Anything that is natural is neither good or bad. We call it natural. Good is natural things that you like. Bad is natural things that you don't like. By the way, arsenic is natural. People who like natural foods. So you get my point. But now extend this. Earthquakes are natural, are they not? Tsunamis? How about disease? How about cancer? How about anger? How about violence? How about war? Now, to call them natural is not to excuse anything, because we have a responsibility to handle each and every one of these situations that threaten human welfare. The point is that this labeling good and bad is a problem. And it's a problem that makes it harder for us to address the problems, not easier for us. So better to understand what is. It's neither good or bad. It's reality as it exists at the moment. Let's deal with it. So this is what we discussed in our last class. In today's class, we go on now to discuss the other kind of duality, which is a duality between you and me. A duality, in fact, the classical way, the scriptural way of talking about this duality is actually the distinction between jiva, jagat, and ishvara. Jiva is person. So there's a difference between jiva and jiva, you and me. Then there's a difference between jiva and jagat, the world. And there's a difference between jiva and ishvara, creator, sustainer, destroyer. And most of this duality causes problems. The duality between jiva and ishvara, perhaps not. But duality between jiva and jiva becomes problematic because there are people we don't like and run away from. That's a problem. There are things in the world we label bad and we find threatening. And what we're going to see in the next couple of verses is wherever, and this is a very profound Upanishadic teaching. This is one of the big revelations of the ancient rishis. They said, wherever there is duality, there is fear. Let's explore that just for a moment, and then we'll see these verses. That's not very intuitive, is it? Wherever there is duality, there is fear. Why? Duality would mean the mugger with a gun. That certainly would be a cause of fear. Duality is the car driving down the street in the wrong direction or too fast or threatening you in your car. Duality is wherever there is something other than you, that other could be beneficial or not. So this is this fundamental discovery of the ancient rishis, that duality leads to feeling threatened. Where there is no duality, there's nothing to feel threatened of. And a good example of this is in deep sleep. In dreams, there's plenty of duality, right? We create our own world. But in deep sleep, what are you afraid of in deep sleep? Is there anything to fear? I find it amazing that people don't even fear nothingness. You would think that you would be afraid to fall asleep because sleep is nothingness. It's oblivion. It's non-existence. It's a kind of death. But no one is afraid of deep sleep. Why? In deep sleep, there's only one entity present. That entity is you. In the absence of anything else, there's nothing to be threatened by. So this is just a brief introduction to help understand this non-duality at the philosophical level. We're done talking about it at the level of good and bad. Now we're to the very Vedantic way of talking about non-duality. And Krishna begins in this first verse to talk about the consequences of taking the world as being more real than it truly is. And actually, we'll let Sri Krishna explain it, and he does so very nicely. Chaya pratyahvaya bhasa. Chaya pratyahvaya bhasa. Yasanto pyarthakarinaha. Yasanto pyarthakarinaha. Evam dehadayo bhava. Evam dehadayo bhava. Yachantyamrityuto bhayam. Yachantyamrityuto bhayam. Talks about things that are not as real as they seem. So we think everything out here is real. It's not as real as it seems. Remember the example I've given many times. This table, this chair, this leg, they're all made of atoms, which are almost entirely empty space. What is that? That is the reality. The scientific, physical reality is that this table, this chair, and this leg are almost all empty space. Notice how experience fools us. And fools us specifically in making us attribute more reality to something than it truly deserves. In ancient times, they didn't know anything about atoms, so Sri Krishna gives different examples. He gives the example of first of a shadow. A shadow, you can see the shadow of a person, and sometimes you mistake the shadow of the person for the person. After all, it's kind of the same size and shape of the person. It moves like a person. So a shadow can be deceptive. You attribute reality to a shadow, which it doesn't have. Also, pratyahvaya. Pratyahvaya means an echo. That which is ahvaya, which is uttered, and prati, it comes back. So when you've had the experience, you go to a canyon or something, you say, hello, and you hear in return, hello, hello, hello. And, again, in modern times, no one is fooled by that. What do you think that they thought about that in ancient times? That must have been kind of mysterious, right? It might have seemed like there's someone saying hello back to you. Of course, they understood there was no one there, but it was mysterious nonetheless. So that echo can be taken as something real, which it's not. And the last example he gives is abhasa, some appearance, some image, like a mirage is the example given many, many times. When it's very hot, you see this waving, when you look at the horizon, and you see this waving of the air, gives a sense of waviness near the horizon, and in that condition, you can see different mirages, actually. It's a reflection of other objects in the air. Of course, we know these mirages to be unreal. They didn't understand mirages in ancient time, so it's not uncommon to attribute more reality to a mirage than it deserves. A funny example, though. Apparently, there are cases where animals in the desert saw the mirage of water and were attracted to it and died of thirst. So the whole point here is mirages, all of these examples of things which seem more real than they are, they have consequences. So we would think there are no consequences. The animals died of thirst. How about, actually, let's see the next line. He says, Hi asantaha api. Even though these are unreal, asantaha, even though they're unreal, they are artha karinaha. They have effects. Even though they're unreal, they have consequences. They have an effect. The mirage is a good example. The famous Vedantic example of the rope snake. What consequence when you're going down the dark alley and you see the snake when there's only a rope? You could have a heart attack. Can you know, it's a kind of a not a very nice example, but you get the point. You can die of a heart attack due to a non-existent snake. Possible, right? In fact, people have actually experienced heart attacks from wrong news or wrong information. I'll give a more tragic example. These are examples of how attributing reality to that which is unreal is a problem. And I've been trying to give fewer political examples, but here comes another political example. Maybe, 15, 20 years ago, the war with Iraq, the United States was convinced that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Were there any? No. None. Zero. So that is ignorance. That is a wrong conception. So to be afraid of the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq is like being afraid of the rope snake, right? And it led to war, unnecessary war. So ignorance has consequences. Ignorance in general has consequences, but here we're being very philosophical now. Attributing more reality to something than it truly has causes problems. To attribute reality to the snake causes fear, right? To attribute reality to the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq causes fear. To attribute, let's try this. To attribute the status of being a mugger to an ordinary man walking down the street, you turn that in your mind. You turn that person into a threat. And you create fear. We're really good at doing this. We superimpose our own fears on things around us in the world, and we create more sources of fear for ourselves. This is a fundamental problem. Here we're looking at it not so much in a psychological sense, but in a really fundamental sense. In Advaita Vedanta, there's nothing to fear because there's nothing Let's get this right. What the usual way of explaining this, which I dislike very much, this is all an illusion. There's nothing to be afraid of. This is all like a dream. Yes and no. That's a very common teaching, and there's some truth to it, but to me, it's very abstract. This is all an illusion. This is all like a dream. How about this? Try this. This is very much in keeping with Shankaracharya's teachings. He never said the world is an illusion. He never said the world is a dream. What he did say, and what Sri Krishna is going to say in the very next verse, is that there is nothing out there as real as your true nature. Now, this is very philosophical, so let's try to unpack this. First of all, the only thing that can hurt you is something that is as real as you. Can the rope snake hurt you? It's not as real as you. Can the weapons of mass destruction hurt the United States? They're not as real as the United States. Anything that is less real than you, like in a dream, the dream elephant who's chasing you, less real than you. Anything that is less real than you cannot hurt you in your essential nature as consciousness. Now, plenty of things are as real as your body. They can hurt your body. A knife is as real as your body. It can hurt your body. Words that cut like a knife are as real as your emotions. So therefore, those words can affect your mind, your emotions. Anything that is as real as you can hurt you. That which is not as real as you can't hurt you. Your body can be hurt by things that are as real. Your mind can be hurt. What about consciousness? Your essential nature, the consciousness which existed before you were born, the consciousness which exists right now in this experience, revealing whatever's happening around you, and the consciousness that will continue to exist when your old body finally gives up and goes away, that unchanging consciousness, which we loosely call the inner divinity, is more real than the knife. It is more real than the words that cut like a knife. It's more real than the rope and snake. It is more real than the weapons of mass destruction, and it's more real than Iraq. The point is that from the standpoint of your true nature as Satchidananda Atma, nothing else out there is as real. And therefore, nothing can threaten you. There's nothing out there to be afraid of. Now, reflect on this just for a moment. Many people criticize highly philosophical teachings, as this teaching of non-duality is as deep and philosophical as it gets. Many people criticize such teachings as being impractical and having no benefit in day-to-day life. Wait a minute. What are we talking about right now? A deeply philosophical concept, that of absolute non-duality. Non-duality in this, we haven't gotten there yet. You have to get the next verse. We'll get there in just a moment. So far, we're not on non-duality yet. We're just on nothing out there is more real than you. Now, we're going to take that a step further. But for now, Sri Krishna concludes this idea in the second half. Evam, thus, for these reasons, because we attribute more reality to things than they deserve, evam, for this reason, deha adayaha bhavaha, bhavaha, things. Things like what? Deha adi, like your physical body and like your mind. Things like that, yachanti, they create bhayam, fear. They bring fear. They produce fear. Why? You attribute more reality to your body and mind than they truly deserve. And here we're still very, very deeply philosophical. Consciousness, the consciousness which is your essential nature, existed before your body, exists while your body exists, and will continue to exist unchanged when your body falls. In this way, it's pretty obvious that consciousness, your essential nature, is more real than your body and mind. Look at the implications. If consciousness is more real than your body and mind, can pain in the body afflict consciousness? This is extremely Vedantic. I didn't think we would get so much. But then remember when we introduced this chapter, it was chapter 823. We said that this was like Jnana Yoga. We're getting some pure teachings of Advaita Vedanta, very deep, profound teachings. In fact, in the whole Uddhava Gita, this is it is the heaviest chapter. So look what we're discussing right now. If your body is as real as your consciousness, then your consciousness is constantly going to be afflicted by the problems of the mind, naturally. If your mind is problems of the body, if your consciousness is as real as your mind, or the other way around, if your mind is as real as consciousness, if your sadness is as real as consciousness, then when sadness is in your mind, you are sad. You can't separate the two. When two things are as real as another, they can affect each other. But what about that which is less real? This is our topic. The elephant in your dream can't hurt you. The snake in the alley can't hurt you. You get that. The weapons of mass destruction can't hurt you. What about this one? Now, undeniably, when the body is injured, there is an experience of pain. No one can possibly deny that very human experience. But that experience of pain is known or unknown? It is known. Known to whom? This is a very profound question. The experience of pain in your body is known to whom? And most of you can answer that question. It's known to me in my essential nature as consciousness. And with the help of the teachings of the ancient rishis, we can come to understand, take some time, but we can come to understand that consciousness being more real than the experience of pain, consciousness itself isn't affected by the experience of pain. The experience, give the simple metaphor, very helpful metaphor. The experience of pain in your mind is revealed by consciousness like the sun reveals things in the world. When the sun reveals something, the sun isn't affected by what it reveals. I've given the example many times. Sun shines on a sacred temple, the sun doesn't become more holy. The sun shines on a puddle of filth, the sun doesn't become tainted. Consciousness is like that shining sun. Consciousness reveals the pain caused by your body and present in your mind is revealed by consciousness, and that consciousness remains unaffected by that experience. This is as profound as it comes. It is deeply philosophical, and look at the benefit. If you really get this, or let's say to the extent you get this, you will learn how to live comfortably with pain. By the way, many people have to, right? You know, chronic pain is a huge problem. Something on a much, much lesser degree. You know, I suffer from chronic dizziness. And early on, it was a nuisance. But now it's so obvious to me. Let the dizziness be there. Who cares? How does dizziness affect consciousness? Consciousness doesn't get dizzy. Because of unchanging consciousness, I know. Dizzy, okay. And to be honest, look at the difference. Somebody may complain, in fact, this chronic dizziness is a huge problem for many people. And it turns their life, they feel, how can I live my life feeling dizzy? Think about it. How can I live? I can't drive? I can't drive. I can't drive. Okay. People struggle and suffer with conditions like this because they think it's as real as they are. They think it really and truly affects them. To me, it's just one more thing that's experienced. You get up in the morning and you experience the sunrise. In the evening, you experience the sunset. Fine, it's just experience. Dizziness is experience. Pain is experience. Sadness is experience. This is very profound. This is really the teachings that demonstrate the state of being enlightened. When you get it, when you identify yourself so completely as unchanging consciousness, with that complete, you shift your identification away from the body, away from the mind, and now your concept of yourself is, I am a conscious being which is utterly unaffected by everything experienced. With that shift of perspective, what happens to suffering? This is the goal of Vedanta. Freedom from suffering is gained through this profound realization that consciousness, your true self, Atma is the next word we're going to see. Your true self as Atma is more real than body, more real than mind, and therefore unaffected by body and mind, just like being unaffected by the snake, unaffected by the dream elephant. These are the deepest teachings of Advaita Vedanta, which Sri Krishna has not discussed so far in the Uddhava Gita, and now we get a big dose of it. Look, and he continues in the next verse. So far I'm talking about being more real. That which is more real can't be affected by that which is less real. Therefore, there's no fear. Now, in the next verse, we go on to this underlying teaching, principle of non-duality. Atmaiva taridam vishwam, atmaiva taridam vishwam, srajate, srajyate srajati prabhuhu, srajyate srajati prabhuhu, trayate trati vishwatma, trayate trati vishwatma, hriyate harati shvaraha, hriyate harati shvaraha. Atma eva. Atma eva. Atma, that consciousness which you might think is so ordinary. Anything that's with us all the time, we tend to take for granted, right? Anything with us all the time you take for granted, like your spouse, would be a good example. But you recognize what a problem it is. Not to see things as they are, as taking things for granted is a huge problem. You take your consciousness for granted. It's something so ordinary. It's with you all the time. But as the ancient rishis discovered, and as Sri Krishna is teaching us here, your consciousness, which you think is ordinary, is absolutely extraordinary in nature. It's not just one of the things in the world. Your consciousness is a fundamental reality. Now, here's where we're going towards Advaita Vedanta now. Your consciousness is not one more thing in the world. There's table, chair, body, and some consciousness. Absolutely not. Table, chair, and body are at one level of existence. Physical. And maybe subtle. Inside the body, there's life, there's breath, there's thinking that happens up here in the brain. So there's a physical reality and a non-physical reality, but both material. Physical material and non-physical material. The universe is made of subtle, of sthula and sukshma, of physical material and non-physical material. Consciousness is not material. It's not one more thing. Consciousness happens to be a fundamental reality, which is why, as we've discussed, I think we've discussed in this class, a topic that comes up a lot in our Vedantic class, your consciousness is not yours. You've heard and you've understood that there is one consciousness manifest in every living being, one and the same manifest. So the consciousness that reveals your experience right now and the consciousness that reveals my experience right now are not two different consciousnesses. Experiences are different. I see a hall full of students. You see a little Swami sitting in a chair up here. So these are extremely different experiences. Experiences are many. Consciousness is one. You might remember the metaphor we've given, one sun reflected in many buckets of water. I won't go into that, but you might remember that metaphor. One consciousness reflected or made manifest in many conscious beings. This is consciousness as a fundamental reality. If we call it fundamental reality, how many... This is highly philosophical. This is big compared to everything else we've seen so far. We're really diving into the deep end of the pool here, so to speak. Sri Krishna is going very deeply here. Look at this. Try to imagine you're a philosopher. Sort of you are, but imagine you really are a philosopher. And in a discussion with another philosopher, you bring up a question. All of this world is made of different things. There is a fundamental reality, which is beyond this world of names and forms. And the other philosopher says, okay, tell me, how many fundamental realities are there? This is a question from your colleague, your philosopher colleague. He asks, how many fundamental realities are there? If you're a philosopher, how will you answer? When we use the word fundamental, what does that suggest? The very use of the word fundamental suggests this is it. It is the, not a reality, but the reality. When you have a reality, it's one amongst many. By the way, that's also why this is called non-dual, Advaita. This is why don't you call it monism or Aikya Vedanta? How's that? The Vedanta of oneness. And it's not called the Vedanta of oneness. It's the Vedanta which is Advaita, not dual. Why? Because wherever you have one is followed by two, etc., etc. So we don't say we're not talking about a fundamental reality, but rather the fundamental reality. Okay. This much you can appreciate just imagining you're a philosopher. Something you couldn't imagine is what the ancient rishis discovered. No one could. I don't think anyone could imagine what they imagined. You can imagine that there is the fundamental reality because of which everything exists. In Sanskrit, we call it Brahman. But what the rishis somehow intuited or somehow grasped is that the fundamental reality because of which everything exists is identical to the consciousness that's revealing your thoughts right now and revealing my thoughts right now. Let me say this again. This is the ultimate teaching of Advaita Vedanta. This is as deep as it goes. And the teaching is this. The fundamental reality because of which the entire cosmos exists is absolutely identical to the consciousness present in your experience right now. I've been with this teaching for many decades. I still find this mind-blowing. This is exactly what the Mahavakya Tattvamasi reveals. It reveals there is no distinction between individual and whole. At the level of reality, there is one. Let me not use that word one again. The fundamental reality because of which the cosmos exists, because of which your experience exists. And it's a nice way to put it. It is the same reality because of which the cosmos exists, the same reality because of which your experience exists. Objective and subjective. Objective reality and subjective reality, meaning experience, have the same substratum. This is the highest teaching. And here Sri Krishna simply says, Atma eva. That Atma. The self, not just yourself. How about the self of the cosmos? By the way, Atma, the word Atma means self, but in Sanskrit, when you say, when somebody is called Dharmatma, the term Dharmatma means the person is Dharma, an embodiment of Dharma. The point is word Atma can mean the essence of something. And here, Atma is the essence of idam, tadidam vishwam. Atma is the essence because of which this cosmos exists. Atma is the essence because of which everything in the cosmos exists, like the one sitting in your seat and the one sitting in this chair. All of that exists having this Atma eva, having this one fundamental reality called Atma as its substratum, Tadidam Vishwam. That Atma is manifest as a universe, not only as a universe, but also that Atma is Prabhu, the Lord, who srijati, who creates, and srijyate, that which is created. This is lovely poetry. A little hard to appreciate. Prabhu refers to Brahmaji. So Brahmaji is the one who srijati, creates the world. And the world is srijyate, created. So the creator and the created are what? Atma eva. Creator and created, Atma eva. Then trayate, trati, vishwatma. Vishwa, Atma, Vishnu, sounds like Vishnu for a reason, Vishnu is the one who pervades. Vishwa is that which is all pervasive. So Vishwatma means Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu what? Trati, protects the universe. So here Sri Krishna says, Vishwatma, Lord Vishnu, who? Trati, who protects the universe, and Trayate, that which is protected, the entire universe, all that is Atma Eva. The same Atma which gives reality to the creator and created is the same Atma that gives reality to the protector and the protected. And you can guess where this is going. Hriyate harati Ishvaraha. Ishvara, of course, means God in general, but if you want to associate Ishvara with any particular deity, Ishvara means Lord Shiva. Not always, but Ishvara can mean Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva does what? Harati, withdraws the universe at the end of time, and the universe, hriyate, is withdrawn, is dissolved. So Sri Krishna here says, Atma Eva, let me paraphrase the whole thing. It's really nice poetry. He says, Atma is the fundamental reality because of which the cosmos exists. Atma is a fundamental reality because of which the creator and created exists, because of which the protector, Lord Vishnu, and the protected universe exists, and the reality because of which Ishvara, Shiva, who harati, who withdraws the universe at the end of time, and the hriyate, the universe which is withdrawn at the end of time, all exists due to one fundamental reality, that fundamental reality being Atma. So now we've come to non-duality. Previously we were saying that you can only fear something which is as real as you. That's what we saw before. You can only fear something else, has to be something else, right? You can only fear something else that's as real as you. Now, given this verse, what else is as real as you? It's all Atma. You, at the fundamental level, consciousness. What else is out there that's as real as the fundamental reality that is consciousness? There is nothing else out there. What you call your consciousness and think of as being so ordinary is this fundamental reality. What Sri Krishna has explained here is incredibly profound, and truly speaking, this is the ultimate teaching of Advaita Vedanta. The Mahavakyas, which express that ultimate truth, they express the reality that there is no difference whatsoever between Tvam and Tat, between the individual and the whole. There is one fundamental reality. Okay, this train of thought concludes with this next verse. Tasmanahyatman, tasmanahyatman, tasmanahyatmanonyasmad, tasmadnahyatmanonyasmad, anyo bhavo nirupitaha, anyo bhavo nirupitaha, nirupiteyam trividha, nirupiteyam trividha, nirmula bhatiratmani, nirmula bhatiratmani. This verse has one more quarter. Idam gunamayam vidhi, idam gunamayam vidhi, trividham mayaya kritam, trividham mayaya kritam. This verse has the 3 lines. So, start in the second half here, nirupita. He says that nirupita iyam. Iyam trividha nirupita. Referring to that Atma, the Atma he talked about in a prior verse where he says, everything is Atma. But then we are so accustomed to looking at Atma in these three ways, as Jiva, individual person, as Jagat, the world, and as Ishvara, the creator, sustainer, destroyer. That's our common understanding, and what Sri Krishna is saying here is that common understanding works at the level of human thought and discourse, but ultimately, Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara, Trividha, this threefold understanding, Nirupita, this threefold understanding of Atma, he says, bhati, is a mere appearance, Atmani, superimposed on Atma. It's a mere appearance of Atma, and it is nirmula. Having it is not, here mula refers to a fundamental reality. It is not a fundamental reality. Jiva is not a fundamental reality. Jagat is not a fundamental reality. Even Ishvara is not a fundamental reality, which really pushes the buttons of our ISKCON friends. They don't like that. It's okay. But this is what Advaita Vedanta says. This is, by the way, this is what Sri Krishna says. ISKCON follows. I don't know how they handle statements like this, but even Sri Krishna says Ishvara is not a fundamental reality. Sri Krishna is not a fundamental reality. Anyway, that's complete aside. So Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara is our threefold way of looking at the universe, but none of these three are fundamental. There is a fundamental reality because of which all the three exist. In a prior verse, Sri Krishna called that reality Atma. And now he gives a little further analysis of Jagat. I said Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara are these three ways of looking at Atma, none of which are fundamental. Now he focuses on Jagat. Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. He just gives a little bit more about Jagat. And about that Jagat, he says, Idam, this Jagat is vidhi, you should understand it, to be gunamayam trividham. This Jagat is threefold. So Atma is threefold, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. And then of the three, Jagat itself is threefold, being made of three gunas. And he says, Mayaya kritam. It is made of Maya, it is just another appearance. And when we say another appearance, we're not talking about illusion. This table, this chair, and this body are not illusions. But they're not as real as a fundamental reality because of which they exist. And based on that, now Sri Krishna concludes. Let me get back to that first one. He says, Tasmat, therefore, nahi atmanaha anyasmat. Set the na aside. Atmanaha anyasmat. Other than Atma, fundamental reality, other than that fundamental reality, na anyaha bhavaha, no other reality, nirupitaha, can be established. Other than Atma, there is nothing else. Advaita. This is it. You have just heard Sri Krishna's unfoldment in a huge span of 2 verses. In these 2 verses, Sri Krishna has unfolded for you the highest teaching of the ancient rishis, of Advaita Vedanta. There's nothing beyond this particular teaching. There is only Atma. Atma, which we look upon in a threefold way, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. But Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, Jiva, individual, Jagat, world, and Ishvara, all have one fundamental reality because of which they exist. You and I exist because of Atma. The world exists because of the same Atma. The creator, sustainer, destroyer exists because of the same Atma. There is only Atma. That is the fundamental reality, not a fundamental reality, the fundamental reality. This is the highest truth of Vedanta. Now, just to finish up this line of thought and finish up our class, this is highly philosophical, so let's go back to everyone's favorite argument. How does this philosophy help us in life? Go back to our discussion about fear. You can only fear something that's other than you. Let's be a little bit more specific. If something is other than you and as real as you. So far, we've only been talking about something as real as you. But obviously, something as real as, so that knife is as real as the body. So therefore, that knife can hurt the body. That knife is also other than the body. So we're adding another factor here. Something that is as real as you and as real as you and other than you, which is what he's concluding here in this verse. If it is as real as you and other than you, watch out. You're in trouble. But we've already established there's nothing as real as you, and now Sri Krishna has established there's nothing other than you, leading to this consequence of this highly philosophical discussion. The consequence is there's nothing as real as you, there's nothing other than you, there is nothing out there to fear. Nothing to fear. Nothing that happens in the world can truly affect the consciousness, which is your essential nature. Nothing that happens to your body or mind can truly affect that consciousness. Imagine what it's like to live absolutely without fear. It's hard to imagine. This is enlightenment. Someone who is truly and deeply established in these teachings. If you wonder why people who we assume are enlightened, you'll see that let me just be a little silly here at the end of class. Can you imagine someone who's enlightened being like this? You know, really hyper alert, afraid, watchful. On the contrary, what do you see? Relaxed, laughing, telling stupid jokes. Because what is there to be afraid of? Nothing is nothing. Nothing is there to fear. They call this abhayam pratishta, to be established in fearlessness is enlightenment. So very profound. You made it through these two verses, which are, I'm just, I studied this several times. I guess when you teach it, then you get the real sense of it. And I didn't anticipate how deep and heavy this would be. But this, in two tiny verses, he's really given this absolute highest vision of the ancient rishis. It's kind of, if to the extent you really get it, it's breathtaking. Now, just a final comment. You may not have gotten it completely. And that's really common. It's like somebody who goes to a museum and sees a wonderful work of art. Unless you're really trained in that particular kind of art, you probably don't get it completely. You probably think, oh, it's really beautiful, it's really skillful, but in order to get it really completely, you would have to have a lot of background. That may be your situation today. So with whatever Vedanta you've understood, you can appreciate this teaching, but an art expert who goes into that same museum, that art expert who's never seen this picture in person before will be stunned, breathtaking, right? And when you more fully appreciate these teachings, you'll find these two verses are absolutely stunning. They're breathtaking because they convey so much in a small span. Okay, that's a good place to conclude for today. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our Vedanta class at 10 o'clock, Shankara's great text, and then satsang, question, answer at 11. Please come join us. We'll conclude with our prayers. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kaving Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspataha Nashrenvan Utabasira Sadhanam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.